Following the unexpected resignation of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is now facing significant pressure to resign now. In her letter of resignation, Ms. Freeland accused Trudeau, who is deeply unpopular at home, of engaging in costly political gimmicks instead of focusing on countering the grave threat of tariffs. She said that the breakdown with Trudeau came over his push for measures, including a sales tax holiday and sending modest checks to taxpayers that would add to the government's deficit. Now, meanwhile, Trudeau's estranged ally NDP has also called for Canadian Prime Minister to resign.
Canada's Finance Minister quit on Monday, dealing another major political blow to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's already unpopular government. Chrystia Freeland said in a stinging resignation letter that she was quitting in the wake of a meeting last Friday with Trudeau, who had asked her to take on a lesser post after the two had argued for weeks over spending. In a letter posted to social media, Freeland said the possibility of new U.S. tariffs represented a grave threat. She wrote, "That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today, so we have the reserves we may need for a tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks, which we can ill afford." Her resignation came just hours before she was due to present an economic update to Parliament. That update showed Canada's fiscal deficit for 2023-2024 came in at over $43 billion, more than half of what was projected last year. Freeland also served as Deputy Prime Minister, and her resignation leaves Trudeau without a key ally in cabinet at a critical juncture. She joins a wave of cabinet ministers who have either already quit or announced they won't run in the next election. Approval ratings indicate Trudeau would lose badly to the opposition Conservatives in the next election, which must be held before the end of October 2025. Dominic LeBlanc, the Public Safety Minister and a member of Trudeau's inner circle, was sworn in as the new Finance Minister later on Monday. Before entering politics in 2013, Freeland worked as a journalist and in senior editorial roles with several media companies, including the Financial Times, the Globe and Mail, and Reuters News, where she worked from 2010 to 2013.
And meanwhile, Trudeau's estranged ally, NDP, has also called for Canadian Prime Minister to resign. Let's listen in to what has exactly been said.
Today, I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go. Right now, Canadians are struggling with the cost of living. I hear it everywhere I go. People cannot find a home that they can afford. They can't buy their groceries. And on top of that, we have Trump threatening tariffs at 25%, which put hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. And instead of focusing on these issues, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are focused on themselves. They're fighting themselves instead of fighting for Canadians. And for that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
Overall, there is now pressure mounting on Canadian Prime Minister, such as he may be considered stepping down before April 2025. The political landscape of Canada is currently at a rather volatile stage. Trudeau's leadership is being criticized by not only opposition parties, but also by some within his own party. On the other hand, Donald Trump has responded to the resignation of Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, calling her behavior totally toxic and that she was fired. He has further taken a jibe at Prime Minister Trudeau, calling him a governor whose regime has come crashing down. Joining us on the show is Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Analyst, Eurasia Group. Pramit, what are you making of what's really happening in Canada right now? Does it look like that pressure is now at an all-time high on Justin Trudeau to step down?
Yes, Trudeau has been fighting for his survival now, arguably since about the fall of last year. We have seen increasingly erratic or short-term policies being practiced by him in an attempt to keep his position alive. So one of them has been, as we in India would know, sacrificing in effect the bilateral relationship with India. And we've also seen him rush to Trump in Mar-a-Lago after Trump was elected and sort of kowtow to him, not that it made any difference. And now finally we see him trying to throw his government's budget into the sink, and his finance minister resigning in protest on this. And this is just what we know internationally. Domestically, the policies are even worse. So he is heading for a clear defeat in his he will not be re-elected, I think, right, under any circumstances. The real issue now is, when do those elections get held? In theory, he can last till October. Most Canadian analysts that I'm talking to are now saying that an election by April or earlier is now very, very likely.
All right, and let's specifically talk about, resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister, and what impact does it likely to have on Justin Trudeau and his politics. Now, that's one of his key leaders, one of his key allies who's no more in the government. He's already, up in arms against various MPs and his own party members who do not want him to continue, who've been asking him to step down. Where does it leave him today?
So he's now reasonably well is isolated in the party, though there's no clear successor. But losing Chrystia Freelander, who was, as I think was mentioned already, one of his closest supporters going back to when he first began running his political campaign, and a person who's very often seen as an adult in the room. When I've talked to foreign officials, including those in India who've had to dealt with the Canadian government, Trudeau is often dismissed as very flaky and shallow, but Chrystia Freelander was always seen as a very sensible individual, a person you could work with if you wish. And I know Indian officials always preferred working with her over Trudeau. So therefore, her departure means not just a loss of political confidence and indications that his inner circle is now basically abandoning him. It also indicates a complete loss of competence within his government. He increasingly now is losing the people who actually ran the government for him. And as she said, the Canadian economy is in terrible shape. It has been their currency, the Canadian dollar, has been falling dramatically against the US dollar. Canadians are now much poorer than their American counterparts. They used to be neck and neck. Housing, of all things, when you realize how huge Canada is, and it has only 40 million people,
right,
is a massive shortage. Because Trudeau has passed regulatory structure that don't allow buildings to be made anymore. You add all of this together, and you've just lost your finance minister,
absolutely,
who's in charge of all this. You are clearly a government in crisis.
Now, before I let you go, Pramit, knowing that Canadian economy is in crisis right now, there is a threat of high tariffs looming with Donald Trump expected to take charge by 20th of January next year. What's next for Justin to do? In your expectation, is he going to step down?
No, he seems to be the type who will try to cling to office as long as possible. And his response to all of the crises he's facing has been basically to just throw money around, or in the case of India, sacrifice a relationship and try to find anything that will allow him to keep going, staggering on and on. So I would expect him not to resign, and he will force his party. At the best, he will hold on to office and force his party to go into elections with him as their leader. And of course, they will go down but they would have to be in a much larger groundswell of revolt within his party. At present, they're still not being prepared to go that far.
All right, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, thank you very much for taking time out for joining us on the show today.